the IEPs, but I've seen teachers not look at the accommodations on the IEP and they'll say, oh, I was supposed to do that? Yes, it's actually under the law that you need to do it. It's not a matter of procedure. Students with an IEP need to be placed in the least restricted environment. This means, in theory, unless someone has a severe cognitive exceptionality, that they're going to be in a mainstream classroom regardless of what needs are. And individuals that take the Florida State assessment will be placed in a mainstream environment, barring behavioral issues, and this is very few and far between. Example, in my school, less than 1% of the students are in an EBD unit, an emotionally behaviorally disabled unit, so it's very small. Classes, because of this, will become more diverse in nature. You have people with many different needs in one class. Curriculum is reflecting the reality of inclusion. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. This is also dependent upon the teacher. And students are being held to a higher level. That's one of the things, especially in the state, when we're looking at Common Core. And one of the difficulties for our students with autism is being able to answer questions that are abstract, being able to locate information, being able to answer contextual questions. And that creates a lot of difficulties. And the parental concerns about inclusion are very important because until recently past, a significant portion of students with high-functioning autism were not placed in a mainstream environment. In my own situation, it was only the past 5 years that it switched over. When I started teaching students with autism, they were in more of a contained environment, the exception of kids that were at the very highest of the high levels. And what parents also want to know is, what level of support will they get? And several people brought this up. One teacher will be fantastic, another teacher will not be. And people want their children to succeed in this environment, not just be there for the sake of being there. Will they truly be integrated into the environment of the classroom? This is another thing. In some classes, I'll say it's fantastic, in other classes, it isn't. I had a student last year that the teacher let him do whatever he wanted to do in regards so he would not disrupt the class, which is the wrong thing. You know what? He's there to learn, not to do his preferable activities. And that's changing that young man and his academic future. How will teachers apply differentiation of instruction to meet their needs? A friend of mine who teaches gifted will look at students in her class that if they have autism, if they have a language difficulty, if they have learning differences, and will adapt it to that. There will be a high level because it's in a gifted class, but she looks at what their needs are. She helps these kids get organized. Because the more demanding it is, the more organized and the more on your feet you need to be. But not every teacher is like this. Some teachers will say, you know what, he's in a gifted class, he needs to do what's expected of him. And that's not meeting the guidelines of an IEP or what inclusion is about. Will teachers follow accommodations in the IEP? People in this audience, I'm sure, will tell me that some will, some won't. Who here has had trouble with a teacher following in a mainstream environment? What situation did you have?
It was a math teacher, and he was putting all the students that were with an IEP. That was my first problem. The second problem was he was getting grades. He would just give them a C, sit back there, like I said, sit back and be quiet. They were not learning. We had a great level meeting. He was like, oh, that's what an accommodation is, because we started
that's one of the things that I feel, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, basically all of what you're saying, that teachers in a mainstream environment need to be schooled in what accommodations are, and that accommodations are legally binding. It's not just there for us to put it there, there for us to pester people in a mainstream environment. It's there to enhance the learning environment for these young people, and if it's not being done, they're not getting what they need to be getting. And how will the student be received in the mainstream environment? Like you're saying, grouping them all together, even at an early age, students know who's different. I can tell you from my own experience, even though I was in a regular ed class, people knew. And when you put everybody together, what you're doing in a sense is creating a stigma for those young people. You're going to affect their self-esteem, and it's unfairly stacking the deck against these young people. If there's preferential seating, you give that child a seat in front of the class. If they cannot be in a certain area because of a draft or because of lighting, you put them in another area, or you turn one of the light switches off. It's not that hard. I do that for myself when I teach my students, and none of them complain. They know it already. Mr. Miller doesn't like a lot of light. That's it. Not hard to do. And what will be done to prevent potential bullying? This is very important, because our young people can't read certain social cues or contexts. It's very likely that they'll be bullied at some time in their academic career. I can tell you, when I was in elementary school, I was bullied almost every day. I kept it from my parents, but my parents realized it because I wasn't very good at hiding it. And there was very little done at the school time. One of the things that I feel when you're integrating students with exceptionalities within a mainstream environment, you need to have a zero tolerance towards bullying. There needs to be concrete consequences for bullying. If you want someone to be able to learn, you want someone to feel at home in an environment, if you don't do this, it's not going to happen. You're not going to have success. You're going to have children that will potentially act out. And what conditions will be created to help foster an environment of academic success? I had one teacher last year that was incredible in the classes I was facilitating. He was a new teacher, and what he did was he went beyond the accommodations. If they needed extra help, they could come to him during his planning period. They could come during lunch. That he was flexible with homework assignments. He looked at what their difficulties were and treated them as any other student in the class, but with special needs, treating them with dignity